Untamed.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
The Platform.
iOS, it's only sport. That's the name of the show. That's the name of this podcast. Martin, Devlin, Lachlan Waugh produce and present a sports show every afternoon on the Platform 1 till 4. This is the highlights package of. In no particular order, special guests today include Mark Butcher, 73 tests for England. He is calling on Sky Sport, Ash's 4th test tonight. Hayden Wilde, just going great guns. The World Triathlon Series circuit overseas. You'll be amazed at how much this young man has to do to keep himself alive and on that circuit as an international athlete. As well as that, regular guest, the ATM Apologise to Me podcast, Mark Watson, and BTE, the doyen, Brendan Telfer experience. But first up, as always, tablets in hand, I say gather my flock. It is time for a sermon. Let us go to the mountaintop.
We live in an amazing, amazing world, and it's wasted on the crappiest generation of just spoiled idiots.
Success pig. There's been a lot of bluster in our local press lately about pay parity and equality of income distribution for female athletes. Essentially just a big pile of cheap and easy clickbait headlines that scream sexist pig at the supposed male oppressor deliberately making decisions that keep women's sport in the financial doldrums. Never will you read any qualitative fiscal analysis of the actual economics involved. Take the football ferns, for example. We deserve equal pay is a continuous call. Equal pay with whom? With every non or semi-pro male player in this country who barely earn $1 themselves? And pay for doing what exactly? Pulling a shirt on? How about scoring a few goals? How about producing consistent winning results? How about not failing and embarrassing yourselves at every international event that you ever appear? Just because you represent your country at sport doesn't mean there's a magic pool of money that suddenly appears to make you all millions. It's just like if you pick up a guitar and start playing it at home. That doesn't mean that all of a sudden iTunes are going to start paying you every week. You put a song out, so what? If nobody wants to hear it, listen to it or buy it, that doesn't mean you get paid. Sport is the same as any other business. You earn when you achieve, because when you achieve is when you become saleable. When you are saleable is when you're attractive to sponsors and investors. Good Lord, does any of this really need an explanation? Sadly, when you read the mainstream New Zealand sports media, it obviously does. We interview Hayden Wilde on the show today. He's in prime position to win the World Triathlon title by year's end. He's already medalled at both the Olympic and Commonwealth Games. And believe it or not, he has no New Zealand sponsors.
I've got some awesome partners, hey. Unfortunately, had to branch overseas as there wasn't actually a lot of New Zealand love going on. As they were a bit afraid to partner with an international athlete.
This guy will be a world champion and has to hunt offshore for financial support and backers. Yet our football women demand to be well paid for a minority sport that in New Zealand, via New Zealand football, has never made any money. Wake up and smell some reality here, people. I was stunned to learn that a company like Ford can pour cash into such a bunch of underachievers when a world-class athlete like Hayden Wilde only gets doors shut in his face. None of it makes any marketing, advertising or economic sense. How many New Zealanders see the Ford sign associated with the Ferns and think, oh, great, I'm going to go out there right now and buy one of their cars? Whoever makes these decisions is just seriously misled. Women's professional tennis leads the world in equality of gender income distribution. For years, the Grand Slams have offered equal prize money. That's because the athletes earn it via the numbers they bring. Viewing figures for female tennis matches often outrate the men's. That's very attractive to advertisers and sponsors. More eyes on the product, more interaction, more engagement, the more money comes in. Good Lord, even for the New Zealand sports media newsrooms, it's surely not that difficult an equation to understand. The Commonwealth Games have just been canned because Victoria can't afford it. The same principle, the same economic equation applies to all sponsorship of all athletes in all sports. There's no bottomless pit of money sitting somewhere. The attitude of the New Zealand mainstream sports media to pay parity is naive, it's idiotic, it lacks any analysis or even basic understanding of what is real. If it doesn't make economic sense, then it is impossible to make actual dollars and real sense.
Devlin.
What do you want? We want information. Information. You won't get it.
The Platform.
Test cricket tonight again, folks. The Ashes. It's the 4th of 5 at Old Trafford. 71 tests for England, 20 of those against Australia, and 8 of them he won. Mark Butcher now works for Sky Sport. He previews for us. What separates it? I mean, it feels like a rice paper between the two teams. A lot of people, Mark, say that the Aussie team is actually a lot better. But when you look at how close, as you say, the tests have actually been, you mentioned the word mistakes before. Is that crucial to you? Have England made too many of them?
England have made, I think particularly in the first two Test matches, I think there were occasions where a sort of a more, how should I say it, a more sort of hardened, or more hard-nosed team would have kind of buried Australia in a couple of the scenarios in the first two tests at Edgbaston. For example, the declaration on day one, which I'm still trying to work out.
Yeah, we all know.
I can't think of any good reason why you might have done that. And other scenarios during that first Test match where sort of England were on top and managed to somehow turn a winning position into one where they were scrapping, and the same at Lords. At 100, Australia really shouldn't have got 400 in the conditions that they were asked to bat in on the first day. And then, Nathan Lyon blows up a calf and England are 180 for one. And then they proceed to just slog the ball up in the air for the next 2 hours and kind of hand Australia a huge advantage in the first innings. And then I suppose, Australia then favourites from there on, but Ben Stokes sort of drags them back into it. And you're just thinking, wow, I mean, in terms of the runs scored, if you look across the two teams, I think England have actually scored more runs in the Test matches, or their batters are averaging better than the Australian ones are, which is just incredible, really, if you think about, to being 2-1 down. And then when it came to the third Test match, there was a 2-hour period there on the Saturday where it rained all day, or there was no play, and then suddenly the clouds parted and England got the biggest break of the entire series, really, which was that 2 hours that they were able to bowl Australia out in, leaving themselves with a 250-run chase. And as soon as they were left with a 250-run chase, it was kind of written in the stars that England would chase that down, because that's what they do very well. It's the rest of the game that they're not quite so sure about how to go about it against a good team.
It seems crazy talk, Mark. I mean, I'm a grumpy old man, and I love my Test cricket, and I, my kind of my kind of attitude to anyone who doesn't is simply jog on. I mean, look, if you don't understand it and you don't get it, I don't have the time or the patience to even explain it to you. When you look at this series and you look at the interest, and I'm sure that your phone's been running hot. Everywhere you go, people are talking to you about this. It's as good as sport gets, my friend. Look, it's got drama, it's got antics, it's got villains and heroes, it's got storylines, it's got pantomime. I don't know how you can spell sport better than that.
No, exactly, and I think you've summed up exactly how England will feel about it. Now, listen, from my point of view, I remember I was absolutely furious after the Lords game. The Edgbaston game, I just thought, well, surely they'll learn from that and they won't make the same mistakes again, or they won't allow sort of hubris to get in the way of winning an Ashes series. And then when they lost at Lords, I was so angry. And I've kind of, since I finished playing and since I've gone into the media and everything, I've prided myself on being able to stand above sort of the parochial feelings and caring too much about who wins and loses, and just trying to be a broadcaster and reading the game and all those other types of things. And I had to have a good long think about why I was so angry about the loss at Lords, and it kind of came to me 24 hours later, and it was that I played against Australia. I played 20 Test matches against Australia, right? Won 5 of them, maybe drew 2 and lost the rest, right? And got buried in a lot of those games. And the idea to me that you would kind of get on top of any Australian side and then kind of let them off the hook was an anathema to me, and I think that was what really upset me.
Understandable,
about it. Because I spent most of my Test match playing career getting absolutely killed by those guys. So that's where that came from. But I can kind of, now I'm watching them play it. You watch Mark Wood tear into Australia at Headingley and kind of turn the whole feeling of the series around just by adding that one player to England's team. And suddenly you think, well, hang on a second. If you've got a batting lineup that is so gung ho that they're happy to smash it down fielders' throats when they got 7 of them on the boundary, and you've got a bowling attack that is very, very capable of knocking a team over in double quick time, because Mark Wood is now in it. and a captain that is capable of doing the most ridiculous things all by himself, you find yourself thinking to yourself, well, actually, if any team can turn over a 2-0 into a 3-2, it's this one. So so you kind of, even the grumpiest and most jaded of old cricket watchers can kind of get swept up in the idea that miracles can happen. We'll probably get brought down to earth. It'll probably rain for 3 days in Manchester and ruin the whole thing. You know?
I've been there a few times. It rains non-stop, mate. So
well, exactly, yeah. As anyone who's been there knows. So that is always a likelihood. And then you might turn around and think to yourself, well, wow. We squandered opportunities at Edgbaston, at Lords, to have things in our own hands. But as it is, it hasn't. What hasn't happened is people were upset, and people were sort of saying that Bazball was all a load of nonsense. And I'd never agreed with that, because I've sort of watched, as you did. You would have done the series against New Zealand last year, the things that Stokes' team did in Pakistan on the flattest pitches imaginable. Even the 1-1 drawn series when England came down there for that sort of low, but it was a very low key Test match in this country, simply because of the time difference and whatever. You kind of look at what they're trying to do in terms of making Test match cricket watchable, and then you plug that in next to the West Indies against India Test match that's just gone by, which was,
my God,
I could barely bring myself to watch. It's just horrific. And you kind of go, well, okay, well, we can perhaps give them a pass for the idea of trying to entertain at all costs. Now, in the final shake-up, if the Ashes go back to Australia, and Australia have not won here since 2001, since I was playing, for crying out loud. So, there's been a long, proud record of England winning Ashes series, or being able to keep the Ashes by not losing Ashes series here in the UK without playing Bazball. And so in the final shake-up, there will be recriminations if England don't end up turning this one around. But they'll be done from the point of view that perhaps that the style was okay, or the idea behind the style was okay. The execution of it at times needed a bit of a little bit more thought and a little bit more care and attention.
Look, I love the stat about you that you played 71 tests and no one-dayers, and that was a record I think that you still hold. Do people still give you a jip about that, do they?
Mate, it's a very, very proud record, that.
It's a fantastic record, mate, isn't it?
It's absolute. Yeah, I still, considering, if we look back over the sort of period of time that I played for England, sort of between 97 and 2004, through the 90s, virtually everybody played a one-day international at some point. So, I don't know whether I should be proud of it or not.
You've got to have words with one of those selectors at some stage if you meet them in the quiet or something, and just say, "Come on, son, what's all that about?"
Seriously, they lost my name. When they were putting it out the hat, they didn't put it in.
To hear the full interview, download the platform at the App Store. Via Platform Plus, you can go back and listen to the whole show and all of the interviews in full. It's time. Episode 46. Mark Watson, Martin Devlin, the Apologise to Me podcast. Let's talk about the All Blacks, and I hope that you got to watch that magnificent performance against the Springboks from China. And I just want to say two words to you. The first one is Bowden, the second one is Barrett. I'll add in fullback, and I'll add in best in New Zealand in that position, Watto. You got nothing. Nothing.
No, Martin, you might actually have me on this one. But
Thank you.
I'm never too big to swallow my pride and say, look, he had a very, very good test at fullback. Look, I'd still like to see, I'm not going to lie, I'd still like to see what Will Jordan can do at fullback. I'd still like to see what Sean Stevenson can do at fullback. I think we've got three players who can potentially play at fullback. Look, I thought it was an outstanding performance from the All Blacks. Really, really good, really pleasing. I think the thing that just frustrates me, Martin, I still just don't like this 3 years of losing games in the name of a World Cup, and we start to come right and suddenly that's all deemed to be okay. Yet, our winning record falls from 83 or 84% to 70 something. And I just don't agree with that mentality. The only concern I still have, Martin, is can we do it 3 weeks in a row? Can we win three big games in 15 days? We're capable of beating any side in the world in a one-off. And I think Ireland are probably the same and France are the same. And this is the thing that I think has frustrated me. okay, so we've got to this point in 3 years of experimenting. And it reminds me, to be honest, it does remind me a little bit of Laurie Mains. He was under a huge amount of criticism back in 93, 94, and pretty much got it right in 95 eventually. And, we lost a lot of tests under Laurie, and then John Hart inherited a very good team and, looked excellent in 96. Can this All Black team win 3 big games in a row? And I'm not sure we know, because they had an opportunity last year on the end of the year tour to put that in place, but we still chopped and changed. Are we going to chop and change again against the Wallabies? Are we going to give Roygaard an opportunity? Are we going to give Sean Stevenson? And my point is, no, the team that took on South Africa should play the Wallabies. Let's just have the best team now playing, because they need to play regularly. They need to demonstrate to us that they have the mental capacity to be able to put that performance together for 3 consecutive games against 3 quality opposition sides. Could they beat South Africa 3 weeks in a row? I don't know. You'd like to think they could, but I'm not sure, because we just haven't seen it.
Apologise to me!
The Warriors, Mark, and once again, it's da-da-da-da-da. Sean Johnson is playing the best rugby league that he has. He has for years, he has, and you are going to be a cheerleader alongside me. Yes, you are, because you got it wrong again, and come on, son. That's 2 in a row you've got wrong, Watto.
God, you're starting to sound like my wife, Martin. Everything I do is wrong, Martin. Everything I do is wrong. God, I was in China, mate. There were things falling apart here, and it was all my fault. I wasn't even here, mate. I wasn't even here. I wasn't even here, mate. Hey, Martin, look, you're right. I went on. Hey, can you send me one of your Can you send me one of those little cheerleading outfits you've got? That sort of slightly shorter one, that slightly kinky one that you do wear. I must admit, it does look good on you, Martin.
Thank you.
But no, look. In fairness to the Warriors, mate, a stunning performance against the Sharks. Backed it up against a stunning performance against Parramatta, sitting 5th on the table here. I still think they're probably a Kevin Campion type player away from winning this whole thing, but mate, they potentially could now, couldn't they? I sat there last year and I heard the Warriors going, and I sat there last year and I thought, what's going to be different this year? What's going to be different the following year? There's just major things wrong within that organisation. But boy, I tell you what, this Andrew Webster's come along. He's defied all expectation. He has changed the game. And this could end up being hell. I mean, we could be on the cusp of Leicester City, couldn't we? We potentially could be on the cusp of being Leicester City. Sides are now looking genuinely at this Warriors team going, mate, they're not just the real deal. They potentially could win this damn thing. And I've always said this about New Zealand sport, and I've always said this about the Warriors. I believe it with the Phoenix. I believe it, it's already been done with the Breakers. When you look at our history in sport, when we put our head down, we eventually end up winning. We eventually end up having those moments of nationalism. You see it on most sports. We've won golfing majors. I've had guys toiling away on the PGA. Michael Campbell gets the breakthrough after a long wait. After a long wait going back to Bob Charles. We've won Formula One World Drivers' Championships. We've just had Shane Van Gisbergen doing some remarkable things. At some point, it's got to be the Warriors. At some points, it's got to be the Wellington Phoenix. We've done it in netball. We've done it in cricket. Well, not quite in cricket, but, we've provided some pretty cool moments in cricket after years and years of disappointment. So why not be the year of the Warriors? Why not them add just a remarkable story to our rich sporting history? And look, I genuinely hope they can do it, mate. I don't like being a doom and gloom merchant, but it's that's like the All Blacks. It's been a tough watch, and so we do get sort of socialised into, I guess, a bit of a negative mindset. And it's just a reminder at times, sometimes you do have to be a bit more positive.
The Tight Five.
5 separate sporting topics, roughly 60 seconds there or thereabouts on each. When the bell goes ding, so do we. Move quickly on to the next one. Ashes tonight, what you got? Football World Cup, the biggest ever sporting event to be staged here. Who says that? Infantino says that. He gave a press conference today, Mr. Infantino, and the slavering journalists, they were just all over it, eagerly reporting every word like it's gospel truth. Gary Stead says Kane Williamson is going very, very well, slightly ahead of where we expect him to be at. That's good news. And Hayden Wilde can't get a New Zealand sponsor.
I've got some awesome partners, hey. Unfortunately, had to branch overseas as there wasn't actually a lot of New Zealand love going on. As they were a bit afraid to partner with an international athlete.
All right, let's talk about Hayden Wilde for starters, man. I mean, when we spoke this morning, and I said to you after the interview, Lachlan, wow, there's a couple of things he said here. One of them is that this guy looks after everything himself. There is no Hayden Wilde manager. Yeah, he's got a coach, but the coach is on Zoom. And then he can't get sponsors in New Zealand. Does this blow you away? I began the program by talking about the pay parity. I'm not going to call it a row. It's just more clickbait headlines that the mass media in New Zealand love to promote because it means that everyone can sit there and scream "Santa's pig" at whoever it is that isn't funding women's sport. But here's a guy that is going to be a world champion at the end of the year. I'm not putting the mocker on him. And this guy struggles. What does this tell you, Lachlan? Just because you play sport doesn't mean that you're going to get well paid. Playing sport, even representing your country, doesn't mean that naturally you're going to become a millionaire. Where's this? Tell me where this big pot of gold is at the end of this rainbow called represent your country, and therefore you deserve to be extremely well rewarded financially for doing so, Lachlan.
The thing that bothers me the most is, as you sort of alluded to there, is that it's not as if you're what's the word? You're taking a punt on someone who hasn't. This guy's got an Olympic medal.
Yes.
He's got a Commonwealth Games medal. He's winning races internationally. Why are you not? Tying your wagon to him.
Well, I would just think that there'd be so many New Zealand sponsors. I look at Ford, who sponsor the football Ferns.
Are companies just scared or nervous about him being a single athlete? Do they just like teams more? Is that why?
Well, he's got a raft of really good overseas sponsors, right? So those people, because I'm trying to think, maybe because the sport that he plays or doesn't get a lot of publicity here, maybe because it's on at the wrong time of the day or night. But then again, there's a hell of a lot of sports that get three or four. But this guy, triathlon is big, and especially in Europe. He just won a race in Japan. They would have been watched by millions on TV. I just don't understand why that connection hasn't been made. Sure, even in the new, Sport New Zealand, High Performance Sport New Zealand, aren't you funding this guy? And if not, why the hell not?
Yeah, but also, that's the case with all Olympic sports, that they're not that big at all until the Olympics come around. Rowing probably by nature is a little bit bigger. But again, you don't really talk about it outside of the Olympics. Then when it gets to the Olympics, we all become huge fans of it. But like guys like Mahi Drysdale, Rob Waddell before him, Hamish Carter. Everyone my age knows that guy because they watched him win a bloody race at Athens when we were like 6 or 7 years old.
Exactly.
We know these people.
Yeah.
So how can you say that Hayden Wilde isn't a name or a face? Because he won a medal at the last Olympics. Everyone my age knows who he is.
So, my message to the mainstream sports media is, just actually do some research and do some analysis and actually add some economics to it. If this guy here is struggling to find sponsors in New Zealand, stuff all sports in New Zealand actually earn any money, can pay their athletes. That's called reality. Who wins the Ashes tonight? Who wins this fourth test starting tonight?
Well, I'm going to say Australia because I've said Australia all series because I think they're a better team.
Rain wins, mate. It's Manchester. It's Munster. Munster, as Gary Neville calls it. Munster. Rain. It rains constantly in Munster.
You're right.
There's rain in the forecast, mate.
It's rain tonight.
Yes.
There's sun and cloud, day 2, day 3,
the weather
rain,
winds. Yeah.
Day 4, rain,
yes,
day 5,
that's
rain.
It.
Yeah, okay. This test will probably...
be rained out?
Yeah, be rained out.
Yeah, well, good prediction, Lachlan. I think a draw is where I'd put my money.
Well, then Australia... Hey, but I'm half right. They win the series then if it's a draw.
Reading a tweet from a guy called Garrick Knight who says, some fun facts as we eagerly await David White's departure from New Zealand cricket. The last 3 test series played in New Zealand was 2017. The last time Australia played a test here, we talked about this yesterday, 2016. At the end of the summer, India will have played 2 tests here in a decade. And here's our upcoming home test schedule. For the upcoming summer, 23-24, we get 2 against Oz, 2 against South Africa. That's brilliant. The following year, we get 3 tests. The year after that, we get 2 tests. So that's 2, 3, 2, 4, 3, 7, 5, 9 tests in 3 years. What was David White telling us, that we get 9 or 10 a year, Lachlan? Can you find that quote? Can we replay that quote he told us? We had a little argument on air about this in an interview the last time that he actually appeared on the platform. And I just said, there's just no way that we're playing that many tests. Surely not.
We play about 9 to 10 test matches a year. That's what we're doing, and it's been pretty consistent, really. And we're playing the best countries in the world.
No, well, clearly the stats say that you're telling porkies, pal. The reality is we don't. I'm not saying that I'm not looking forward to this test schedule coming up, but 9 to 10 tests a year? Keep drinking the Kool-Aid. Football ferns, and we'll talk about this again tomorrow. The biggest sporting event ever to be staged here. Look, again, I just get so tired of the exaggeratives and superlatives that are bandied around in the media. Does it really matter? I mean, was the Rugby World Cup in 2011 bigger than this event? Probably in the minds of New Zealanders because the All Blacks are playing and we won the tournament. But really, does it matter, Lachlan? Does it?
No, not at all. I
just
guess
enjoy it. If you don't want to watch the Football Women's World Cup, don't watch it. If you do, jump aboard and love every second of it.
Well, if FIFA's saying it's a way in which they can
leverage off, I suppose, to sell advertising.
Well, gloat about the fact that they're bringing the biggest sporting event in the history of our country to our country. So it looks good to them. But at least if you're a fan or a pundit and you're saying, oh, it's the biggest sporting event in New Zealand, look at that. Stuff you, Rugby World Cup. Like, well, okay, cool.
Whatever,
it's a bigger sport,
yeah,
sure.
Great. Football, guess what, is the number one game on the
planet
called Earth. Yeah.
Could be number one sport on another planet, we don't know.
Hayden Wilde is just going great guns in the World Triathlon Series circuit. He's poised to become a world champion. He won the short course on the weekend in Hamburg. He's already medalled at both the Olympic Games and the Commonwealth Games. But life isn't as peachy as you might think being an international athlete on the world stage. Congratulations. You're just going from strength to strength this year and winning the World Triathlon Championship title in Hamburg. Wow, man. I mean, so has it really sunk in yet?
Yeah, no, it was an awesome race. It was really nice to go 2 from 2. In Hamburg last year, I got the win, but yeah, this time, it being as our Super Sprint World Championships, which is really nice. It's not the World Championship Series, but it's a world title under the World Triathlon, which is it's awesome, and it's the first time someone has ever been a Sprint World Champion. So pretty cool. I get to take that one.
It's over so quick. 19 minutes 26 seconds. It's just like a blitz, isn't it?
Yeah, no, it's pretty damn quick. Hey, it was raced over 2 days. We raced Friday. We had our qualifying round, and then if you didn't make the top 10 in your qualifying out of 30 athletes, you went to repecharge, and then you had another opportunity to get into the final day on Saturday. So the 20 athletes that did not make it had another chance on Friday night, and the top 5 from both heats got through. So essentially 30 guys on Saturday. We raced 20 minutes, and then we race 20 minutes, and then the top 20 out of the 30 go through to the next round, and then same thing again. But the top 10 go through out of the 20 athletes, and then the final is the top 10 athletes race and try and grab that world title.
How much more difficult is it to do that than to do your normal triathlons, where you know, I suppose there's a lot more planning in the normal ones, is there?
I guess, for me personally, it's, simple's best, and just keeping everything really simple and not overthinking everything, that's when you start making mistakes. So just doing the little things right. And this sort of racing is super hard. We're essentially racing the distance of an Olympic distance race, but it's all in smaller increments, which makes the racing probably, way harder than it normally is, just because we're essentially racing as hard as we can for 20 minutes, where at Olympic distance you can kind of settle into a rhythm and a tempo. This racing, there's no room for settling into anything. It's just full gas the whole time. Yeah, I'm trying to put it in motor racing terms. I'm thinking it's a real sprint as opposed to an endurance, but it comes down to microseconds and moments, doesn't it? Transition, things like that. I mean, how much more work do you have to do on those things? I actually didn't do any extra work on the transitions. Okay. I just kind of hoped, just with a lot of, we race so many times throughout the year, and we do it, countlessly and all the time, that it just becomes second nature. So, you just, as I said before, it's just doing the little things right, and just when you attack those little things, just being like super relaxed and heading into it with a clearer mind. Hayden Wilde, newly crowned Super Sprint World Triathlon champion. Now look, so when it comes to your rivals, especially Alex here and also Vasco, are you thinking about these guys, or you're just more focused entirely on what you're doing? Mostly just trying to think about the little things, like, with with Alex always being thereabouts, and Vasco and Matthew Hauser and all of the top guys, like there's so many guys you can think about, but if you start thinking about and looking at what they're doing, you're kind of putting the race into their hand and letting them dictate it. So I kind of try and just do my own thing and try and make myself the dictator and see if they can follow me.
No, it sounds like a dream come true, mate. You're in Hamburg, you're in Germany, you're staying in Andorra at the moment. Hopefully you can bump into the old mate George Bennett, and then you're off to England, Sunderland to do the next one. I don't suppose you get that much time though, really, to sit and sort of have a good look around, do you?
No, yeah. There's all the little things in between, like living out of a suitcase and living ice and catching planes and
exactly.
Yeah, it's everyone thinks it's all lights and stars and all that, but it's the in betweens of packing bikes up and staying in the cheapest hotels around just to try and get by. Unfortunately, triathlon. It is definitely not a sport that makes millions, but we try our best and we do it for the love of the sport. And if we can make $1 on the side, it works pretty well as well.
Hayden, how much logistics, when you're talking about that, is actually involved? How much admin do you have to do a day or a week where you're organising all your stuff, making sure everything's here, getting your boxes ticked, your passport in place, your tickets, all that stuff?
Yep, yeah, so I do that myself, book flights, book accommodation, make sure I've got everything ready for the race, make sure my bikes are all in tip-top condition. I can't afford to have a mechanic with me 24/7, and got to deal with my nutrition myself as well. And when you get to the kind of the country, you hopefully have all like the your Airbnb sorted when you're kind of getting into there. So, and then on top of that is all in the free time is making partners happy with my awesome partners, and doing posts for them and doing engagements with them and going to head offices and stuff. So with all the training, there's definitely a ton of admin as well. So it's just trying to fit everything in and try and make everyone happy in the same space. But I think everyone is normally pretty happy when I'm racing well. So it's an easy box ticker when you're performing. Yeah, winners are grinners, all right. And the time that you spend with your coach and that, is that mostly online these days on the phone? Mostly, yeah, just over a training platform. So it's pretty easy. But my coach is here for a few months of this year, and then he'll go back to New Zealand later on this month. To hear the full interview, download the platform at the App Store. Via Platform Plus, you can go back and listen to the whole show and all of the interviews in full. Commonwealth Games Cannes 2026 gone. Victoria deciding it can't afford it. Even though Melbourne, capital of Victoria, did host it in 2006, 20 years ago, you would have thought that maybe some of those facilities would be in place. Anyway, I'm not an expert on this, but a guy called Brendan Telfer is the BTE. I know that you have been a media, rhymes with upper hut and starts with a slur, on every single broadcast channel there is in the country talking about the Commonwealth Games, mate. Is there anything that you can add that you haven't said already?
Well, there's some interesting stuff coming out of Australia today. First of all, I see the Sydney Morning Herald have run a big article today congratulating Daniel Andrews for pulling the pin on this prohibitively expensive exercise for $7 billion. He's been copping flack from sports administrators back here in New Zealand, which I don't think is justified. I heard Karen Smith experience.
Very easy for her to say that, I thought, really.
And I tell you what, she's claiming that because she's on some Commonwealth committee, she has seen figures that show that the budget was 2.5 million Australian, a billion. 2.5 billion, yep. And now Andrews has come out and said it's more likely 6 or 7. And so she said he's deliberately inflating these figures. Why on earth would a politician inflate cost expenses around a project? I would say, without any doubt, that Andrews' figures are closer to the mark than Smith's. We know with every project of this size, the inflation, look at this, central railway, the city railway link here in Auckland has been going for 3 years. It's doubled in price. That highway they opened a couple of weeks ago north of Auckland.
Yeah, that's now got cracks in it. Yeah.
And so if the original budget for these games was $2.5 billion set back a couple of years ago, in all likelihood it's probably going to be about $5 billion at least. And so he's pulled the plug on it. It now turns out that the Gold Coast Commonwealth Games in 2018 came very close to suffering the same fate. They were essentially funded by the Queensland government, and I think the Commonwealth government, the central government, or federal government as they call it in Australia, kicked them some money as well. But the costs were getting out of hand, and so a decision was made whether to pull the pin on the 2018 Games, along the lines of what happened with Durban a couple of years earlier. So, but in the end, they felt it would be perhaps embarrassing and awkward and awful for all sorts of kind of reasons if they pulled the pin. So they just took the added cost on the chin and absorbed it and put the money into the Games, and they went ahead. But the total cost of those Games, even back in 2018, was in excess of $1 billion. So they've become prohibitively expensive. Durban, remember, pulled out. Durban was given the Games in, I think, 2014 or 2018, and 2 years before the Games, or a couple of years before it, they told the Commonwealth Games Federation they just didn't have the money. They were $400 million or pounds short. This is a city of 4 million people, and it was a kumbaya kind of moment. First time in Africa, the Games were going to Africa, to a big city with big facilities. Kingsmead Rugby Stadium holds 50,000 people. And that fell over because they couldn't raise the money. Birmingham came along and at the 11th hour put together a cut price, sort of kind of cut down deal. My impression is that Birmingham didn't really want those Commonwealth Games, but in the end, Boris Johnson came up with a cheque for £778 million, and suddenly the fathers and mothers, city fathers and mothers of Birmingham said, oh, well, we can make this work, and they did. So they have now Victoria is hopelessly in debt if they were to continue. So it's been plagued by financial problems, and yet there are still sports administrators in New Zealand who are all enthusiastic about them coming to New Zealand.
Even the Christchurch mayor sitting there saying, oh, we'll host the Games.
What planet are these people on?
What planet are the newsrooms that report this stuff as fact without any analysis or investigation, Brendan? I mean, that's as much of a... The other thing is, here's a question for you, yes or no answer. If FIFA weren't funding this Women's World Cup 100%, would we be co-hosting?
I doubt it somehow. I doubt it. But that's just got a kind of a bit of a fallacious argument.
But you need an underwriter. You need somebody to come along and fund this because...
Football, soccer, call it what you like, football, is fortunate. You've got this organisation which is just a cash cow that can chuck money. And I quite like the idea that they've put $500,000 into the facilities at East Coast Bays. They put a few a few $100,000 into my old club, your old club, Western Springs. And I've seen what they've done down at Kitay Park, which is the practice base.
Mate, there was a swamp. That used to be a swamp when the kids played on it. It's now carpet, mate. Yeah, I mean, it's a putting green.
Exactly. Yeah, they put a new all-weather track down there about 6 or 8 months ago, and the New Zealand team are based there. Well, it's where they're training for the duration of this World Cup. So, FIFA's a world of their own. They've got money to chuck around, but you can't, if you haven't got big television revenues for your international sporting event, you starve. And that's the problem for the Commonwealth Games.
Right.
American television doesn't give a toss about the Commonwealth Games. The EU countries, do you think Bulgarians and Germans and Austrians and Italians care about the Commonwealth Games? So where do they get their money from?
It's an economic exercise, and it comes down to cash flow and whether or not it covers its own costs. That's our podcast for today. Thank you so much for listening. If you want to listen to the entire show, 1 till 4, Monday to Friday, download the Platform app, and via Platform Plus, you can go back and listen to whatever shows over however many weeks at your leisure, at your listening pleasure. Platform Plus. First thing to do, though, is download the Platform app.
Devlin.
Unbelievable. Incredible.
The Platform.